Project 2025, for some conservatives, it's a dream handbook, but for many Democrats, it's America's worst nightmare. Either way, the controversial 900-page conservative playbook has many Americans fired up. Authored by dozens of former President Trump's allies and orchestrated by the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, the controversial policy proposal has alarm bells ringing across the country. And in the wake of the project's director, Paul Dance, stepping down amid the controversy, it's time to wake up, Washington. The Democrats have called it extreme.
Let's be clear. This represents an outright attack on our children, our families, and our future.
And Trump has been trying to distance himself from it.
I don't know what the hell it is. It's Project 25. But I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it.
Officials on the project claim they do not speak for any specific candidate and will not shut the project down in Dan's absence. So why does it exist? What's it all about? And why is Project 2025 so terrifying to so many Americans? Here to break it all down is the Hill's House leadership reporter, Emily Brooks. Emily, thank you so much for joining me today. I think this is your first time on the show, so welcome. Want to jump right into it. You primarily cover House Republicans and have been closely following the controversy surrounding Project 2025. So in a nutshell, what is it?
Well, essentially, you can think of this as a policy wish list for all of conservative Washington, these outside think tanks like the Heritage Foundation and over 100 other conservative organizations that have signed on to this. So this is ideally, if there is a next conservative administration, which at this point would be the next Trump administration, they're hoping that these policies are ready to go, can be implemented. And, you know, it is not exactly created in mind with a campaign that needs to win, which is why you have the Trump campaign distancing itself from these policy proposals, because there are bits and pieces of it which are a lot more extreme and conservative than Trump wants to be.
So we've seen this very much in the headlines with Democrats trying to seize on it, some Republicans like Trump distancing himself. But the latest development in all of this is that Paul Dance stepped down as the project's director. So why did he step down, or do we have any reason yet as to why he stepped down? And what does this mean for the agenda going forward?
Well, the Heritage Foundation's president, Kevin Roberts, said in a statement, sort of indicated that his stepping down coincided with a logical endpoint of part of Project 2025, the part where they were actually drafting policies and getting them ready. Allegedly, that's what happened. However, you know, this does come in the context of the Trump campaign really pushing back on Project 2025. Paul Dance himself, you know, he was seen as a link to the Trump administration. He was formerly chief of staff in the Office of Personnel Management in the Trump administration beforehand. And so, you know, his stepping down from the project sort of takes away a little bit of that credibility that it had built up being sort of a Trumpian type of project.
So, you know, I've chatted with a number of Republican sources who have sort of exhibited frustration that this was released so close to the election day. So why did the Heritage Foundation try to do this ahead of the general election? We know that the GOP is trying to win over swing voters. So are Democrats. But, you know, why would they do this if they're trying to appeal to that swing independent voting bloc?
Well, I think you have to think about the different incentives that an outside conservative organization like the Heritage Foundation and their allies would have versus a campaign. Now, the Heritage Foundation is not tasked with winning over voters in swing districts. They are trying to push and advance conservative policy, make it as conservative as possible, really getting prepared and anticipating the next administration in which they might be able to do that. And so this has been in the works for years. And that policy playbook and presidential transition project, you know, another reason why they say they created this is it's not only the policy perspective of it, but they also have a big database and cadre of individuals who could potentially staff a Trump administration. You might remember in the last administration, there were a lot of issues about being able to find enough people to staff it. So these are individuals that they think would be ready to go and start in the next administration.
So you and I, we work in politics and media. We're talking about Project 2025. We know that here in Washington, it's a big topic of conversations and political campaigns. It is as well. But how is this playing outside of Washington? A lot of Republicans I've chatted with have said, yeah, we might be worried about it, but we don't think this is essentially top of voters' minds when they're thinking about casting their vote.
You know, I've heard that from Republicans too. However, I will say that this has certainly exited the Washington bubble. You have seen search interest in Project 2025. About a month ago, it exceeded search interest in Taylor Swift. It has gone viral on TikTok. You've seen celebrities like Lizzo posting on TikTok about Project 2025. So it's really taken over a life of its own. And even polls are showing that voters are aware when you say Project 2025, they're thinking of this scary type of conservative policies, and it shows that the Democratic Party has been pretty effective in using it as a tactic to define their opponents.
I did not know that about the exceeding Taylor Swift and search interest. That's very interesting, and it might seem trivial, but that's actually pretty remarkable, and how people get their information and such. So I've been covering a number of Democratic rallies with Harris and her surrogates, her potential Veep stakes contenders, and we know that her and President Biden have both worked to tie Trump to Project 2025, as well as JD Vance, and a number of these potential VP contenders have included it in their messaging as well. So are these attacks proving to be effective? I mean, from your last answer, it seems like they are.
Yeah, certainly you are seeing that interest ticking up. It's breaking out. And also, I think the Trump administration's response to Project 2025 shows that the Democrats are being effective. Trump himself is distancing himself from Project 2025. His campaign is saying that it's a pain in the you-know-what, and it is really, something that they wouldn't even really think about. You don't often hear a presidential campaign talk about a list of policy priorities from a think tank that people wrote down in a 900-page document white paper, right? So that really wouldn't be happening if not for the Democratic attacks, and those attacks proving to be effective.
So finally, I just want to dive into some of the policy proposals that are included in Project 2025. Which policies in the agenda are eliciting the most backlash? I mean, I hear Democrats talking about reproductive rights, for example, quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one area in which the Trump campaign and Project 2025 differ. Project 2025 goes a lot further than Trump wants to, for example, in rescinding FDA approval of mifepristone, the abortion pill. But they do overlap in a lot of areas, such as on beefing up deportations and border enforcement. But, there are a lot of proposals in this conservative wish list. They include essentially eliminating the Department of Education. There are also things that would make it a lot easier to fire federal workers. Really, every area of the federal government in this 900-plus page policy book goes department by department and suggests ways in which they can make it as conservative as possible.
It's a lot to dig through, and definitely a lot of different messages coming out on the agenda. Emily Brooks, thank you so much for stopping by to break it all down for us.
Thank you so much.